Hello everyone. On this video we will be looking at ratios and proportions. Okay, now the setup of a ratio is pretty basic. There's nothing too complicated about it. So you have the ratio of two numbers is a fraction where the first number in the ratio is the numerator and the second number is the denominator. Okay, so if you have your two numbers, we'll call numbers A and B. The ratio of A to B, remember, your first number is written as your numerator, and your second number will be written as your denominator. Or you can write it as a ratio of A to B. Okay, let me give you a quick example. Okay, so if you have a 2-to-1 ratio, that will be written as a 2-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1. Okay, so what about this one? If you have a 5-to-3 ratio, how do you think that would be written? Well, that would be written as a 5-to-3 ratio or 5-to-3 ratio. Okay, so if they ask for it in fraction form, they'd want it with a numerator and denominator. Otherwise, both of them would be correct. All right. So if you are, let me put that now. If you are still writing this, feel free to press pause and finish writing. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next page. Okay, and this page answers how a ratio is used. Okay, so the ratio, what it does is shows a relation between two things. Okay, now two of the examples I have here would give you kind of a simplified idea of a ratio. Okay, so let's say you have a room, and in this room you have 3 women and 2 men. So if they ask for the ratio of women to men, that means you have 3 women for every 2 men. Okay, so that means your ratio will be 3-to-2 or 3-to-2. Okay, that's because the women are listed first and the men are listed second, so that's why you have your 3-to-2, women to men or women to men. Okay, so what about this one? Okay, let's say there are 2 men and 3 women in the room. This one asks for the ratio of women to men. What if you have the ratio of men to women? Now you have the men are listed first. Okay, so we know we have 2 men and 3 women. So since the men are listed first, you have a ratio of 2 men for every 3 women, or a 2-to-3 ratio. Okay, so the number that goes in the numerator in this form, let me move this up a little bit, or in front in the ratio form, all depends on which one is mentioned first. This one, the men are mentioned before the women, and up here, the women are listed before the men. Okay? All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to a few more examples. Okay, so just a heads up, ratios can be simplified the same way fractions are simplified. Okay, so there's absolutely no difference in the way they're simplified. Okay, so let's say for this example, what if you wanted to express the ratio of 16-to-48 as a fraction in lowest terms? Okay, so we know that ratio of 16-to-48 in fractional form looks like that. But in lowest terms, we're going to go ahead and simplify it. So 16, we know that that is 16. Well, you can do 4 times 4 and 4 times 12. But we're going to get a little bit deeper than that one. So we're going to say it's 16 times 1. And 48 is 16 times 3. So we only have to simplify it once. If we use 12 times 4 and 4 times 4, we'd have to simplify it over and over and over, which would still work, but we're just doing this because it's a little bit quicker. Okay, so 16 divided by 16 cancels each other out. So you're left with a ratio of 1 to 3. So that means that a ratio of 16 to 48 is equal to the ratio of 1 to 3, or you can write it as a ratio of 1 to 3. All right. So what about the next example? Well, if you want to find the ratio of the length of a pole, let's say pole A, we'll say that's 21 inches, to the length of pole B, which is 9 inches, in lowest terms. All right, so what I want you to do is go ahead and press pause and try this one on your own. All right, so assuming you've already pressed pause and finished this one, let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, so which one is mentioned first? Pole A is mentioned first. So it's the ratio of pole A to pole B. All right, so that means pole A is 21 inches. So that's the ratio of 21 to 9. Okay, now since the 21 is mentioned first, pole A, we're going to write that as a ratio of 21 to 9. But we can simplify that because 21 is 7 times 3, and 9 is 3 times 3. Okay, anything divided by itself is equal to 1. So that's a 7 to 3 ratio. The ratio is 7 to 3, which is equal to 7 to 3, which is also equal to 7 to 3. All right, so if you know how to simplify a fraction, you know how to simplify a ratio. The exact same steps. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on to a few more examples. All right, so this one is a little bit different, but I still want you to try it before I solve it. So what if you want to write the ratio of 2/3 to 4/9 as a fraction in lowest terms? Okay, so just give that one a try on your own. All right, so I'm assuming you press pause and work this one out. So let's go ahead and work this one out. All right, now remember what we're looking for is just the ratio of 2/3 to 4/9. Okay, now even though it looks a little bit different, it's still the exact same process. Nothing has changed. Because remember, if you have a ratio, put a little side note here, a ratio of A to B, that would be from A to B. Same thing here. A ratio of 2/3 to 4/9 is just 2/3 to 4/9. Okay, if this is your A, that will be on top. If this is your B, that will be in the denominator. Okay, now the thing is, we want to simplify this, so we're going to just rewrite it. So if we rewrite it as 2/3 divided by 4/9. Okay. Now what do we have here? We have division of fractions. So now we go through the steps for division of fractions. What's the steps? Well, we write down our first fraction, which is 2/3. Our division changes to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction. So this 4/9 becomes 9/4. Okay, so we just go ahead and multiply across. So you have 2 times 9 over 3 times 4. All right, so before we multiply, we're going to go ahead and simplify it first. So this 4, we know that's 2 times 2, and this 9, we know that that is 3 times 3. So instead of 2 times 9, we're going to have 2 times 3 times 3. Instead of 3 times 4, we're going to have 3 times 2 times 2. Okay, and then we go ahead and we simplify. Okay, so this 2 up here and this 2 down here will cancel out. So anything divided by itself is just equal to 1. This 3 here and this 3 here cancel out, or it could be that 3 and that 3, doesn't matter. So you have both of those cancel out and become 1. So you have 1 times 3 times, well, 1 times 1 times 3, which is 3, and 1 times 1 times 2, which is 2. Okay, so we know that the ratio of 2/3 to 4/9 is equal to the ratio of 3 to 2, or 3 to 2. Whichever way you write it, that is your answer. All right, so if you are still writing this one, as always, feel free to press pause and finish up. But now we're going to go on to the next page and talk about proportions. All right, now with a proportion is really just an equation stating that two ratios are equal. Okay, so you remember how we did the equivalent fractions? Same thing. So let's say, for example, you have 21 divided by 9, or 21 over 9 is equal to 7/3. Okay. Now, as a fraction, this would be correct, because if you make 21 7 times 3 and 9 3 times 3, the 3's would cancel out and you'd be left with 7/3. But when this is a ratio being equal to another ratio, now this is a proportion. Okay, now as a proportion, it reads this way. 21 is to 9 as 7 is to 3. Okay, so 21 is to 9 as 7 is to 3. All right, so let's say we do another example of how to read a proportion. Let's say you have 1/3, or 1 to 3 and 4 to 12. And we say that that is a proportion. Okay, how do you think that would read? I want you to go ahead and write how you believe this would read. Okay, so go ahead and press pause and write that out. Remember, use this one as a guide. Okay, so using this as a guide, remember 21 is to 9 as 7 is to 3. So this would reads as, I meant to do that, 1:3 as 4:12. All right, so let's try another proportion just to make sure you have the idea. So the ratio of 16 to 48 is equal to the ratio of 1:3. So since these are ratios, we know that this is a proportion. All right, so what I want you to do again is go ahead and press pause and write out how this would read. All right, so assuming you've already done that, let's go ahead. And this reads as 16 is to 48 as 1 is to 3. Okay, and that's your proportion. That's how you would read a proportion. All right. So now we're going to look at what happens when one of those 4 values are missing. What if we don't know one of those 4 values? We know we have a proportion. We have 2 ratios on opposite sides of the equal sign, and we want to solve for one of those missing ratios. All right, so if you are still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and move on and discuss the cross product rule. Okay, if A is to B as C is to D, then A times D is equal to B times C. Okay, and it's called the cross product rule because whenever you have these 2 ratios, and it even works on fractions, you're just going to cross multiply to get this here. All right, so for example, what if we have the ratio of 1 to 5 as 6 is to 30? Okay, so if we cross multiply, we see we have 30 times 1 is equal to 5 times 6. Okay, so 30 times 1 is just 30, and 5 times 6 is 30. So this is true. All right, so now let's do that with a missing variable. All right, so if you're still writing, feel free to press pause, but we're going to go ahead and start on the new example. All right, so using cross multiplication, solve the proportion 12 is to some unknown y as 8 is to 50. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and press pause and use cross multiplication to solve that one. Excuse me. Okay, so assuming you've gone ahead and press pause and work this one out, let's verify your answer. Okay, so 12 is to y as 8 is to 50. So we go ahead and we use our cross multiplication. Okay, so you have 8 times y. So 8 times y equals 12 times 50. All right, so 12 times 50, you know, that's 600. So this is 8 times y equals 600. So if we divide both sides by 8, you know that anything divided by itself is just 1. So that means that y is equal to 600 over 8, which means that y is equal to 75. Okay, so if we replace y with 75, we know that 12 is to 75 as 8 is to 50 is a proportion. Oops, bring that up a little bit. There we go. All right. So if you are, once again, still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our next example. Okay, so on this one, we want to find the unknown variable n if n is to 3 as 0.4 or 4/10 is equal to is to 8. Not equal to 8, but it is to 8. All right, so once again, I want you to go ahead and press pause and start on this one on your own. All right, so we're going to go ahead and assume you're all done. So let's verify your answer. Okay, n is to 3 as 0.4 is to 8. So we go ahead and cross multiply. So we have 8 times n is equal to 3 times 0.4. 3 times 0.4. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and solve that one right on the side here. Okay, so 0.4 times 3. Okay, so we temporarily remove all decimal points, which is just 4 times 3. Which is 12. So we know on this side we only have one decimal digit. So that means we get our decimal and we move it from the end to the left once. So it's 1.2. Okay. So 8 times n is equal to 1.2. Okay. So we divide both sides by 8. Anything divided by itself is equal to 1. That means 1 times n, or just n, is equal to 1.2 over 8. Okay, so what's 1.2 over 8? Well, let's find that out. So 1.2 divided by 8, we're going to rewrite that as 1.2 divided by 8. That 8 is already a whole number, so we don't have to move the decimal left or right, so we just run it straight up there. Okay, so 8 goes into 12 one time. 8 times 1 is 8. 12 minus 8 is 4. You go ahead and add a 0 here. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 8 times 5 is 40, and we have our remainder of 0, so that is our answer. So n is equal to, you can put a 0 in front of there if you like, 0.15. All right. So if you are still writing, feel free to press pause. But we're going to go ahead and do one more example. And this one is a little tricky, so you want to be careful. Okay, so what if we wanted to solve 2 feet 6 inches is to 4 feet 3 inches as the length L is to 8 feet 6 inches. Okay, so a hint to solve this one is you want to convert all of these to inches. I'll give you a little bit of a I guess you say, cheat card. 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. 2 feet is equal to 24 inches. 3 feet is equal to 36 inches, and we'll just jump ahead to the 4 feet is equal to 48 inches, and 8 feet is equal to 96 inches. All right, so using that, I want you to go ahead and press pause and try this one on your own. All right, so assuming you've paused it and you've tried to work this one out, let's go ahead and verify your answer. Okay, so we have, just going to rewrite it, 2 feet 6 inches is to 4 feet 3 inches, as L is to 8 feet 6 inches. So we're going to solve for our unknown length of L. All right, so we want to just convert this to inches just to make it easier instead of trying to cross multiply a bunch of different units of measure. Okay, so 2 feet, we know that 2 feet is 24 inches. So you have 2 feet plus 6 inches, that will become 24 inches plus 6 inches. 4 feet, we know that's 48 inches. So that's 48 inches plus 3 inches. So you have 48 plus 3. So really just 4 feet plus 3 inches. That unknown length of L will just stay L. You have 8 feet 6 inches. So you have 96 inches is 8 feet. So you have 96 inches plus 6 inches. Okay, so 24 plus 6 is 30. So you have 30 inches. 48 plus 3 is 51. Is to 51 inches. And 96 plus 6 is 102. So you have 102 inches. All right, so now they're all the same unit of measure. We don't have feet and inches all mixed together. They're all one solid unit of measure. So now we go ahead and we cross multiply. Okay, so that's why we had the hint of convert to inches. Okay, so you have 51 times L is equal to 102 times 30. So 30 inches times 102 inches. Okay, now 30 times 102 is 3,060. So we have 51 inches times the length L, forgot to put the inches there, is equal to 3,060. And we're going to take the inches and move them to the outside. So inch times inch is inch squared. So we just kind of moved it to the outside. Okay, so now we want to solve for our unknown length of L, but we have to get rid of this 51 inches. So we divide both sides by 51 inches. Anything divided by itself is just 1, so that disappears. So 1 times L is just L. And that's equal to, this unit of measure inch cancels out with one of those. We'll pick that one. So we have 3,060 divided by 51 inches, since that inch is the only one left. Okay, so that means L, 3,060 divided by 51, is actually equal to 60 inches. Okay, and 60 inches is actually equal to 5 feet. So we can write that, or your L is equal to 5 feet. Either one of those would be correct. All right. So hopefully this made ratios and proportions not seem so bad. Hopefully it made a little sense. And I will see you on the next video.